The Last Hope. Captain Ilara Chen stared at the tactical display as another orbital defense platform around Earth winked out of existence. The blue-green hologram of her homeworld now resembled a wounded animal, surrounded by the predatory red markers of the hegemony warships methodically dismantling humanity's defenses. Status report, she demanded, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. Lieutenant Marcus Rivera looked up from his console, face ashen. Earth command is gone, Captain. Defense grid at 12% capacity. We're receiving distress calls from all continental capitals. Ilara closed her eyes briefly. The JSS Vindication was humanity's first and only experimental deep space vessel equipped with the revolutionary phase shift drive, a technology that even the hegemony, with their 10,000 years of interstellar dominance, had never encountered. Now it was humanity's last hope. Plot a course away from Earth, she ordered. We can't help them if we're dead. Captain, we can't just leave, began Commander Takeda, her second in command. We're not abandoning Earth, Hiroshi, Ilara cut him off. We're ensuring humanity survives to fight another day. As the Vindication disappeared into the darkness of space, Ilara made a silent promise to the billions left behind. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The bridge fell silent as Earth shrank on their view screens. Tears streaked down many faces, but no one made a sound. They all knew what was at stake. Phase shift status, Ilara asked, breaking the heavy silence. Chief Engineer Zoe Okonkwo looked up from her station. Phase shift drive is operational. We can engage whenever you're ready, Captain. Ilara nodded. Take us out of the system. Maximum phase. The stars blurred as the Vindication activated its experimental drive. Unlike the standard gravitic engines used by the hegemony, the phase shift technology didn't just move through space. It partially shifted the vessel into an adjacent dimension, making it nearly impossible to track. We're clear of solar system boundaries, reported Navigator Aishan Patel. No sign of pursuit. Ilara stood from her command chair and faced her crew, 47 men and women, all that remained of Earth's advanced space program. Their faces showed exhaustion, shock, and grief. I know what you're all feeling, she said. I feel it too. But we don't have the luxury of mourning right now. Our planet may be occupied, but humanity is not defeated. Not as long as we're still out here. Dr. Mia Santos approached the captain, scanner in hand. You're injured, Captain. That wound needs attention. Ilara touched her temple, surprised to find blood. In the chaos of escape, she hadn't even noticed. Later, she said. First, we need a plan. In the ship's tactical room, the senior officers gathered around a holographic display showing the hegemony's fleet movements. Their attack was precise, said Security Chief Callum Fraser. They knew exactly where to hit us and when. How did they get that intelligence? Ilara studied the pattern of the attack. They'd been watching us longer than we realized. Probably intercepted all our communications. What do we do now? Asked Rivera. We're one ship against an entire galactic empire. Ilara's eyes hardened. We gather intelligence, we learn their weaknesses, and then we strike back. With what? Takeda challenged. Our weapons are advanced, but we can't take on their entire fleet. We won't have to, Ilara replied. Not if we're smart about this. Over the next weeks, the Vindication maintained a stealth orbit around a distant moon in a neighboring system. The crew worked in shifts to repair minor damage from their escape and take inventory of their resources. Ilara sat alone in her quarters, reviewing the limited data they had on the hegemony. Earth had encountered hegemony scout ships before, but global leaders had dismissed them as random alien visitors. No one had imagined they were the vanguard of an invasion force. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Enter, she called. Okonkwo stepped in, carrying a datapad. Captain, I've been analyzing the hegemony's weapons technology based on what we observed during the attack. Their energy weapons are powerful, but they follow predictable patterns. More importantly, they seemed to have completely abandoned projectile technology. Ilara raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Meaning our kinetic cannons might be very effective against them. They don't appear to have shields designed to stop physical projectiles. For the first time since the attack, Ilara felt a spark of hope. Good work, Zoe. What about their tracking systems? Primitive compared to our phase shift tech. They rely on tachyon fields for detection. We can easily avoid those. Ilara nodded slowly, an idea forming. So we can hit them without them seeing us coming. A month passed as the crew of the Vindication established a routine. They saved power by keeping most systems on minimal function. Food would last 6 months if they were careful. Water was recycled efficiently. During a routine sensor sweep, Communications Officer Laila Ahmadi suddenly straightened. "Captain, I'm picking up hegemony transmissions. Heavy traffic." Ilara joined her at the console. "Can you decode them?" "Working on it. The AI is processing the language patterns now." Hours later, the senior officers gathered as Ahmadi presented her findings. "They're celebrating," she said bitterly. "The Supreme Overseer himself is coming to visit Earth as their 10,000th conquered world. They're assembling something called the Dominion Fleet as a show of power." Takeda shook his head. 10,000 worlds. How do we fight against that? "One ship at a time," Ilara answered. "This Dominion Fleet. When and where?" Ahmadi consulted her notes. 3 weeks from now. They'll gather at the Hegemony shipyard in the Cygnus sector before heading to Earth. Ilara's expression turned calculating. "That's our target." "You want to attack their shipyard?" Fraser asked incredulously. "No. We're going to follow the Dominion Fleet, study it, and find the perfect moment to strike." The crew looked at each other nervously. "It's suicide," Paddle said softly. "It's our only chance," Ilara countered. "If we can damage their Dominion Fleet, we'll show the galaxy that the hegemony isn't invincible. It might give other worlds the courage to resist." Okonkwo nodded slowly. The Vindication was built for this, to test experimental technology against unknown threats. No one knows what this ship is truly capable of, not even us. Ilara looked around at her officers. "I won't order you to do this. It's a dangerous mission with slim chances of success, but it's also our best hope for someday freeing Earth." One by one, the officers nodded their agreement. "For Earth," Rivera said firmly. "For humanity," added Dr. Santos. Ilara felt a surge of pride in her crew. "Set course for the Cygnus sector. Keep us dark, minimal power signatures. We've got 3 weeks to prepare for the fight of our lives." As the Vindication glided silently through space, Ilara returned to her quarters. She opened a small compartment and took out a photo of her family on Earth, her parents, her brother, her niece, all now under hegemony control. "I'm coming back," she whispered to the image, "and I'm bringing hell with me." 2 months passed with the Vindication operating in stealth mode at the edges of hegemony territory. The ship's phase shift drive, technology the hegemony had never developed, allowed them to move unseen. "The translation program is complete," reported Science Officer Farah Kazemi. "We now understand their communications." Ilara nodded, reviewing the tactical display. "And what have we learned?" "The hegemony believes Earth is thoroughly conquered," replied Tactical Officer Don Williams. "They're already moving on to their next targets." Ilara's eyes narrowed as she studied the intercepted hegemony transmissions. A pattern emerged, references to something called the Dominion Fleet. "I need more information," she said. "We're going to infiltrate that outpost." Hours later, slipping through the hegemony base's security, Ilara downloaded the coordinates and details of the Supreme Overseer's prized Dominion Fleet, an armada preparing for a ceremonial tour of their latest conquest. Earth. The impossible victory. The Vindication drifted silently through the void, its systems running on minimal power. Inside the ship, the crew moved with purpose despite their circumstances. For 2 months they had lived as ghosts, watching and waiting. In the observation deck, Ilara stared at the stars. The hegemony's territory spread across thousands of systems, marked in red on her datapad. Earth was just one small dot among many. "Captain," Takeda said softly, entering the room. "You should rest. You've been up for 20 hours straight." Ilara didn't turn around. "Every time I close my eyes, I see Earth burning, Hiroshi." Takeda stood beside her. "We all do. But we need you at your best." She nodded reluctantly. "Wake me if anything changes." Sleep came fitfully in her small quarters. Dreams of home haunted her. Her grandfather's farm in New Zealand, the streets of Singapore where she grew up, the academy where she trained, all possibly gone now. The ship's alarm jolted her awake. She rushed to the bridge, finding the crew already at battle stations. "Hegemony patrol ship," Okonkwo reported, "passing within sensor range." Ilara took her seat. "Phase shift status." "Holding steady," Paddle replied. "They can't see us unless they know exactly what to look for." They watched tensely as the hegemony vessel cruised past their position. Its sleek, predatory design reminded them of the fleet that had destroyed Earth's defenses. "They're moving on," Fraser said finally. "We're clear." Ilara released her breath. "That was too close. We need to move deeper into the shadow regions." The shadow regions were areas of space where radiation and dust clouds interfered with standard sensors. The Vindication had been using them as hiding spots while gathering intelligence. During the daily briefing, Kazemi displayed her findings on the main screen. "I've completed the analysis of the Dominion fleet's specifications. Their command structure is rigid, ceremonial. More importantly, I've identified their flagship, the Immortal Dawn. According to their military channels, they consider this a victory tour, not a combat operation." Williams added, "Their security protocols will be relaxed." "They're overconfident," Ilara said. "Good. What else?" "There's a Calliope Nebula along their route," Pytel pointed out. "If we strike there, the ionized gases would interfere with their sensors and communications." Ilara studied the star charts. "The nebula also has unpredictable gravity eddies. Perfect for us, but challenging for their large formations." "Our ammunition stores are limited," Okonkwo cautioned. "Even with the element of surprise, we can't take on the entire Dominion fleet." "We don't need to," Ilara explained. "We just need to strike at their heart, the Supreme Overseer's flagship. Show the galaxy that their leader isn't untouchable." The meeting continued for hours as they refined the plan. Each officer contributed their expertise. Okonkwo calculated the exact power requirements for the phase shifts. Williams analyzed the hegemony fleet formation weaknesses. Dr. Santos modified the medical bay for maximum casualty response. Later that night, Ilara found Takeda alone in the ship's observation lounge, staring at the stars. "Still think I'm crazy?" she asked, joining him. He turned to her with a weary smile. "Completely. But that doesn't mean you're wrong. You've known me since the academy, Hiroshi. Have I ever led you into a fight we couldn't win?" "This isn't like the training simulations," he said quietly. "This is real. If we fail, humanity loses its last defender." Ilara nodded. "And if we do nothing, humanity remains enslaved forever. I'm not asking for blind faith. I'm asking you to believe in what humans do best, overcome impossible odds." Takeda was silent for a long moment. "My grandmother was a history professor. She specialized in ancient warfare. She used to tell me stories about how smaller forces defeated larger ones throughout human history." "Like what?" "Thermopylae, the Battle of Agincourt, the Siege of Vienna." Takeda smiled slightly. "Humans have a talent for doing the unexpected. That's what the hegemony doesn't understand about us," Ilara said. "They see our technology, our resources, but they miss our greatest strength. We never give up, and we never stop adapting." The day of the attack arrived. The Dominion fleet, 200 vessels strong, approached the Calliope Nebula right on schedule. The Vindication waited, hidden in the swirling gases, systems powered down to avoid detection. All hands to battle stations, Ilara ordered. Prepare for phase shift attack run. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role in the coming fight. There would be no second chances. Dominion fleet entering the nebula, reported Patel. Their formation is loosening as expected. Ilara stood at the center of the bridge, watching the tactical display as the massive hegemony ships entered the trap. The flagship, Immortal Dawn, was at the center of the formation, surrounded by protective escorts. Weapons status, she asked. Kinetic cannons charged and loaded, Williams replied. All torpedoes armed. Phase shift ready, Okonkwo confirmed. Ilara took a deep breath. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. Execute attack pattern Alpha, she ordered. Phase shift now. The Vindication disappeared from normal space, shifting partially into another dimension. To the hegemony sensors, they simply didn't exist. Phase complete, Okonkwo reported. We're in position behind their flagship. Return to normal space, Ilara commanded. Fire all forward kinetic cannons, then execute immediate phase shift to position Bravo. The Vindication flickered into existence directly behind the Immortal Dawn. Before the hegemony could react, the human vessel fired a devastating barrage of solid projectiles. Technology the aliens had abandoned millennia ago in favor of energy weapons. The kinetic rounds tore through the flagship's rear shields, designed to stop energy attacks but useless against physical objects. The Vindication vanished again before return fire could target them. Direct hits, Williams called out. Their primary engines are severely damaged. Phase shift to position Charlie, Ilara ordered. Target their command deck. Again and again, the Vindication appeared, fired, and disappeared before the hegemony could respond. The Dominion fleet, caught in the nebula's confines and unable to maintain formation, began firing wildly into the clouds, hitting their own ships in the confusion. We've triggered a chain reaction in their power core, reported Williams after their fifth attack run. The Immortal Dawn is crippled. Emergency communications flooded the hegemony channels as the flagship began breaking apart. Through the translation program, the Vindication's crew could hear the panic in the alien voices, something they had never experienced before. Supreme Overseer Czar demands our surrender, Amati reported, a note of amazement in her voice. He's evacuating to a shuttle. Track that shuttle, Ilara ordered. Phase shift to intercept. The Vindication appeared alongside the escaping craft. With precision targeting, they disabled its engines without destroying it. Bring it aboard, Ilara commanded. Security team to the docking bay. Minutes later, Fraser's voice came through the comm. We have him, Captain. The Supreme Overseer is in custody. A cheer went up across the bridge. Ilara allowed herself a small smile before returning to the task at hand. Broadcast on all hegemony frequencies, she ordered Amati, and make sure it reaches their homeworld. Ilara stood before the camera, her uniform bearing the scars of battle, but her posture unbending. This is Captain Ilara Chen of the Earth vessel Vindication. Your Supreme Overseer is now our prisoner. Your Dominion fleet lies in ruins. This is the cost of attacking Earth. We are not alone in suffering under your tyranny, but we may be the first to show that you can be defeated. To all subjugated worlds watching this transmission, the time to resist is now. Humanity stands with you. As the message went out across hegemony space, reports began coming in of uprisings on a dozen worlds. Ships from other conquered species, long forced into service in the hegemony navy, began turning against their masters. It's working, Tekiva said in amazement. They're actually fighting back. Ilara watched the tactical display as the once mighty Dominion fleet dissolved into chaos. This isn't just about saving Earth anymore. It's about freeing every world they've conquered. In the detention cell, Supreme Overseer Zor glared at Ilara with 4 contemptuous eyes. You've made a grave mistake, human. The hegemony has ruled for 10,000 years. Your primitive victory changes nothing. Ilara met his gaze steadily. That's where you're wrong. For 10,000 years, you've conquered species who surrendered at the first show of force. You've forgotten what it's like to face an enemy who refuses to give up. You're just one ship, Zar spat. Today, yes, Ilara agreed. But we won't be alone tomorrow. As the Vindication slipped away from the battle, reports continued to flood in of rebellions spreading across hegemony space. The galaxy was changing, awakening from a long slumber of subjugation. On the bridge, Ilara plotted a course back toward Earth. They had struck the first blow, but the war to liberate humanity's homeworld, and countless other conquered planets, was just beginning. Set course for the Proxima system, she ordered. There's a resistance forming there we need to contact. As the stars blurred around them, Ilara Chen looked at her crew, tired but triumphant. Against impossible odds, they had changed the fate of the galaxy. One ship, one desperate plan, one moment of human defiance had accomplished what 10,000 years of oppression could not prevent. Hope had returned to the stars.